The sky above New York darkened as the massive Thorlian vessel moved into position, casting a shadow that stretched across Manhattan. On the streets below, humans gathered in silent awe, necks craned upward, many recording with their phones despite official warnings about possible signal interference. The ship, silver, crystalline, and impossibly graceful, hovered without any visible means of propulsion. Admiral Helena Chen watched the broadcast from her secure office 90 meters beneath the Pacific Ocean. Her weathered face remained impassive, but her fingers tightened around her coffee mug until her knuckles whitened. 20 years of preparation, and still the sight of an alien vessel above Earth stirred something primal in her chest. "Status report," she commanded, and the wall of monitors surrounding her lit up with data streams. "All Phoenix facilities dark and undetectable," her executive officer reported. "Monitoring stations confirm the Thorlians are conducting standard atmospheric and geological surveys. They haven't penetrated beyond the oceanic crust." Chen nodded. "And our guests?" "Approaching the UN headquarters now. Our embedded analysts report 17 distinct alien species in the delegation, with the Exorlians clearly in charge." The central screen switched to a live feed from the United Nations General Assembly. High Ambassador Taurix trode confidently to the podium, his translucent skin shifting through patterns of blue and purple. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, his 4 upper limbs moved with fluid grace as he adjusted the microphone. The assembled world leaders looked like schoolchildren before a principal. "People of Earth," Taurix began, his voice melodic despite the electronic translation. "The Thorlian Confederacy welcomes you to the galactic community. Your radio signals have reached our monitoring stations for decades, and we have watched your civilization's development with great interest." Chen's secure phone vibrated. The message from the president was terse. "They're exactly as you predicted." On screen, Taurix continued his address. "Your species has shown remarkable progress for your development stage. Your art, music, and cultural achievements are quite impressive." He paused, mandibles clicking in what the xenolinguists had identified as a gesture of condescending amusement. "Your technological attempts are also commendable, if somewhat misdirected." Polite laughter rippled through the alien delegation. Several human representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "The Confederacy has therefore classified Earth as a Category 3 protected developing civilization. We will establish an embassy in your orbit and provide limited technological assistance appropriate to your current development level. For your safety, all space travel beyond your lunar satellite must receive prior approval from Confederate authorities." The Secretary General's question about the duration of these restrictions was met with an answer that sent murmurs through the Assembly Hall. "Such protection is typically maintained for several of your centuries, until a species demonstrates sufficient maturity. We have found this prevents developing worlds from harming themselves with premature technological advancement." Admiral Chen closed the feed and turned to the secure terminal that connected only to 6 other locations on Earth. She entered her authentication codes and typed 5 simple words. They took the bait. Begin. Across the globe, in hidden facilities beneath mountains, oceans, and ice caps, systems that had remained dormant for years silently activated. In the Kuiper Belt, inside a hollowed-out asteroid officially designated as Mining Outpost K-42, Commander Elisa Santiago received Chen's message and smiled. "Attention Phoenix crew," she announced over the station intercom. "Operation Revelation is now active. Prepare the Phantom for departure." The greatest deception in human history had officially begun. Dr. Marcus Rivera adjusted his visitor badge, a glowing blue hexagon that doubled as a tracking device, and tried to maintain his pleasant smile. 6 months into humanity's inclusion in the galactic community, and the novelty of being treated like a precocious child had thoroughly worn off. The Xorlian embassy station hung in orbit like a crystalline lotus blossom, its transparent sections offering breathtaking views of Earth below. Everywhere, Aliens from a dozen species mingled, their conversations punctuated by translator devices that struggled with certain concepts. Ah, the human scientist. A tall, insect-like being approached, compound eyes glistening. I am Nexel, cynobiologist from the Kren Cooperative. Your species fascinates me. Rivera extended his hand, then remembered the cultural briefing. My apologies. I understand physical contact is considered inappropriate. So quick to learn. Nexel chirped, mandibles vibrating with what Rivera had come to recognize as patronizing delight. Here, I'd prepared something for you. The alien handed over a simplified star chart, labeled in both Xorlian Standard and English. The scale was absurdly basic, with childish icons marking different types of celestial bodies. Thank you, Rivera said, forcing warmth into his voice while mentally cataloging the actual navigational data embedded in the chart's holographic layer. His modified watch, containing Phoenix Initiative technology, was already scanning and decoding the information. Across the reception hall, a group of high-ranking Xorlian officials gathered around a display showing Earth's early space program failures. Their translator was off, but Rivera didn't need it to understand their amusement at the primitive rockets exploding on launch pads. You must join us for the cultural exhibition, Nexel insisted, guiding Rivera toward a large viewing area. We've prepared a most educational presentation on proper developmental pathways for emerging species. The lights dimmed, and Rivera endured 30 minutes of what amounted to a cosmic kindergarten lesson. The underlying message was clear: follow the Confederacy's guidance, or remain forever stunted. When the reception finally concluded, Rivera was escorted to his temporary quarters, a specially adapted room designed for human comfort that nonetheless made him feel like a specimen in a terrarium. The moment the door sealed, he activated the signal jammer disguised as a sleep aid device and removed his watch. The data extracted from the star chart confirmed everything. The Xorlians had unwittingly revealed the location of a major wormhole nexus, exactly where Phoenix astrophysicists had theorized it would be. Rivera carefully transmitted the findings using the quantum entanglement communicator hidden in his toiletry kit. Unlike conventional signals, this communication was truly instantaneous and undetectable, based on Dr. Okafor's revolutionary work. Package delivered, he whispered, the confirmation light blinking green. Thousands of kilometers away in the darkness of the Kuiper Belt, Commander Santiago received Rivera's transmission aboard the Phantom. The ship's navigation officer immediately began plotting coordinates based on the new data. They've given us everything we need, Santiago announced to her crew. The wormhole nexus matches our predictions perfectly. Lieutenant Quan, the weapons specialist, looked up from his console, and they have no idea what we're capable of. Santiago allowed herself a rare smile. According to Rivera, they're still laughing at footage of our Saturn V rockets. They think we're fumbling with chemical propulsion, while they've moved on to gravitic drives. If only they knew, Quan said, gesturing to the Phantom's quantum displacement engine, technology that even the Confederacy hadn't mastered. They'll know soon enough, Santiago replied, her expression hardening. Navigation, prepare for our next reconnaissance mission. Let's find out what these benevolent protectors are really planning for Earth. 20 years before the Xorlians appeared in Earth's skies, Dr. Amara Okafor stood before a skeptical audience at the International Physics Symposium in Geneva. Her presentation on quantum displacement theory had drawn curious stares, then dismissive laughter. You're suggesting that Einstein was fundamentally wrong, Professor Harding had asked, not bothering to hide his contempt. Not wrong, Okafor had replied calmly. Incomplete, just as Newton was incomplete before him. 3 days later, she disappeared. The scientific community assumed she had retreated in shame after her theories were so publicly ridiculed. The truth was far different. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, Okafor now stood in a vast chamber hewn from ancient glacier. 12 screens displayed the faces of the Phoenix Initiative Oversight Committee, representatives from nations that had officially been enemies on the surface but had united in secret after the first confirmed detection of alien signals in 2025. We've achieved stable quantum displacement at macroscopic scale, Okafor reported, her voice echoing in the cavernous lab. Behind her, a titanium sphere flickered and simultaneously appeared in two separate containment fields 3 meters apart. "Impossible," whispered the Russian representative, though the evidence contradicted his words. "No," Okafor corrected. "Simply unexpected. Traditional physics follows a linear development path, the same path any observing alien civilization would expect us to follow. But by pursuing theories outside the mainstream, we've discovered principles they may have overlooked or never explored." The American representative leaned forward. "And you're certain this technology is undetectable by conventional means? Quantum displacement doesn't generate the typical energetic signatures associated with propulsion or power generation. There's no radiation, no subspace distortion. To conventional sensors, an object utilizing this technology simply ceases to exist in one location and appears in another." The Chinese representative spoke next. "Dr. Okafor, in practical terms, what does this mean for Project Phoenix?" Okafor smiled for the first time. "It means we can build ships that move between stars without conventional drives. Vessels that can appear and disappear at will. Technology that breaks every rule in the current understanding of physics." She gestured to the engineering team waiting at the edge of the lab. They wheeled forward a large model of what would eventually become the Phantom. "Most importantly," Okafor continued, "it means that when we eventually encounter alien civilizations, we won't be helpless. They'll expect us to be fumbling with primitive rockets and nuclear fission, while we've been developing technology that might surpass their own." The committee exchanged glances. What had begun as a desperate contingency plan now offered something none had dared hope for: advantage. "How soon can you begin construction on a functional prototype?" asked the Indian representative. "We already have," Okafor replied, bringing up schematics on the main display. "The propulsion system was successfully tested last month at the Lunar Shadow facility. With appropriate funding, we can have a fully operational vessel within 5 years." As the committee voted unanimously to triple the project's budget, Admiral Chen, then a junior officer assigned as military liaison, approached Okafor after the call ended. "Do you really think we can stay hidden?" she asked quietly. "If these aliens are as advanced as we suspect." Okafor's expression turned serious. "They'll be looking for radio waves, fusion experiments, antimatter research, the expected path. They won't be looking for quantum displacement because they likely never developed it themselves." She glanced at the prototype model. "Sometimes the greatest advantage comes from being underestimated, Lieutenant. Remember that." Chen nodded, not yet realizing how prophetic those words would prove to be. The Phantom drifted silently through the heart of Thorlian space, its quantum displacement field rendering it completely invisible to conventional sensors. Unlike traditional cloaking technology, it didn't bend light or absorb radiation. It partially shifted the vessel into an adjacent quantum state, making it effectively non-existent to normal detection methods. Captain Sophia Reyes stood on the bridge, watching the massive Thorlian shipyard through the view screen. Dozens of vessels in various stages of construction hung suspended in the artificial gravity wells. Worker ships buzzed around like insects servicing a hive. Recording all frequencies, Lieutenant Park reported from the communication station. "Their security protocols are impressive, but they're not designed to detect our quantum taps." Reyes nodded. The Phantom had been conducting reconnaissance missions for 3 months now, gathering intelligence that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of their supposed protectors. "Captain," Chief Engineer Suarez called from his station, "I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations in their sensor grid. Recommend we adjust our phase variance." "Do it," Reyes ordered, the slightest edge of tension in her voice. They were deep in enemy territory, far beyond any possibility of rescue if discovered. The main display shifted to show the data they'd been collecting, logs from 17 different worlds currently under Xorlian protection. The pattern was consistent and alarming. Initial contact, technological restrictions, resource surveys, and eventually, exploitation. On 3 planets, native populations have been relocated to more suitable habitats after valuable resources were discovered beneath their cities. Message incoming from Admiral Chen, Park announced. Maximum encryption. Reyes moved to her private console. Chen's face appeared, lined with worry. "We've intercepted disturbing communications, Captain," the Admiral said without preamble. "The Xorlians have detected trace quantum resonance deposits under the Pacific. They're planning detailed seismic surveys." Reyes felt her blood run cold. Quantum resonance deposits were rare and immensely valuable, and one of Earth's largest deposits sat directly above the Phoenix Initiative's primary headquarters. How soon? Their survey vessels depart tomorrow. But that's not all. Chen's expression darkened further. "We've decoded their resource classification protocol. Earth isn't just a protected civilization. We're classified as a resource-rich development zone with dispensable indigenous population." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. "Orders, Admiral. Continue your mission. We need everything you can gather on their fleet deployment and defensive capabilities. The Oversight Committee is debating our next move." But Chen hesitated. "I believe Operation Revelation may be necessary sooner than we planned." As the transmission ended, Lieutenant Quan spoke from the tactical station. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual activity from the Xorlian security vessels. They're changing their patrol pattern." Reyes turned, alarm rising. "Specifics. They're converging on Sector 39, increasing sensor suites. It's almost as if they're searching for something. Something like us," Suarez muttered. "Prepare for emergency displacement," Reyes ordered. "Plot coordinates for." A proximity alert blared across the bridge. A Xorlian patrol ship had altered course directly toward them, though visual confirmation showed no sign that they'd been detected yet. "They've deployed quantum resonance scanners," Quan reported. Voice tight. "Technology they shouldn't have according to our intelligence." Reyes made her decision instantly. "Suarez, emergency jump. Now. Coordinates. Anywhere but here." The Phantom flickered and vanished just as the Xorlian scanners swept through the space it had occupied. In the sudden displacement, none of the crew noticed the tiny tracking particle that attached itself to their hull, a technology even the Phoenix Initiative hadn't anticipated. 18 months after first contact, the facade of Xorlian benevolence had worn dangerously thin. Admiral Chen stood before the emergency session of the Phoenix Initiative Oversight Committee, her face grim as she delivered her report. 3 days ago, the lunar mining colony in Tycho Crater discovered a rich vein of quantum-active minerals. Within 12 hours, Xorlian safety inspectors arrived and declared the entire region off-limits to human personnel. On the main screen, satellite imagery showed alien mining equipment being deployed across the lunar surface. When Colony Administrator Rodriguez protested, 3 miners were exposed to vacuum in what the Xorlians described as an unfortunate airlock malfunction. Chen's voice remained steady, but her eyes burned with controlled anger. "We have evidence it was deliberate." The Brazilian representative leaned forward. "And the situation in the Amazon basin." Chen switched the display to show massive crystalline structures rising from the rainforest. "They're calling these atmospheric research platforms. In reality, they're deep scanning for quantum resonance deposits. They deployed them without permission or warning and have restricted access to a 50-kilometer radius." "What about the Phantom?" asked the Indian representative. Has Captain Reyes reported back from her mission? A shadow crossed Chen's face. "The Phantom returned yesterday, but..." She hesitated. "They were nearly detected during their last reconnaissance. We suspect that Xorlians may have technology we haven't accounted for, specifically advanced quantum detection systems." Murmurs of concern filled the chamber. If the Corleans could detect quantum displacement technology, the entire Phoenix initiative was at risk. There's more, Chen continued. We've detected unusual seismic activity near all 7 of our primary facilities. The pattern suggests deliberate deep scanning, focusing on precisely the areas where we're hidden. The screen displayed a global map with pulsing red indicators: the Mariana Trench facility, the Antarctic base, the Atacama Desert installation, and 4 others. All showed signs of targeted scanning. Most concerning is this. Chen pulled up an intercepted transmission, translated from Xorlian encryption. It's a resource extraction timeline. They're planning to begin full-scale mining operations within 3 months, starting with the Pacific Rim and the human populations in those areas. The question came from the Chinese representative, though everyone already knew the answer. Scheduled for relocation to suitable habitats, Chen replied, the euphemism hanging heavy in the air. Based on what Captain Rice discovered about other worlds, that likely means off-planet containment facilities, while they strip Earth of resources. The committee sat in stunned silence. Their worst fears were being realized faster than even the most pessimistic projections had suggested. We need more time, the Russian representative finally said. The Revelation fleet isn't fully operational. 2 of our ships are still undergoing final systems integration. Time is precisely what we don't have, Chen responded, pulling up a final image. A Xorlian deep-sea exploration vessel deploying probes directly above the Mariana Trench facility. This was taken 4 hours ago. They're practically on our doorstep. She straightened, her decision already made before walking into the meeting. I'm implementing Revelation Protocol effective immediately. Captain Rice and the Phantom are already on standby. The consequences, began the American representative. The consequences of waiting would be far worse. Chen cut him off. The Xorlians believe us to be helpless primitives. It's time they learned exactly how wrong they are. As the committee voted, unanimously, though some with clear reluctance, Chen sent the encrypted command that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Operation Revelation is go. Unveil the truth. The grand chamber of the Xorlian embassy station hummed with the voices of 17 different species. Holographic displays flickered with resource projections and population statistics as High Ambassador Taurix addressed the first Interstellar Resource Management Summit. As stewards of developing worlds, his translator relayed smoothly, the Confederacy has a responsibility to manage resources efficiently. Earth presents unique challenges due to its population distribution. The human delegates, carefully selected for their diplomatic skills rather than scientific knowledge, shifted uncomfortably as Taurix displayed a map highlighting priority extraction zones. Regrettably, temporary population relocation will be necessary, Taurix continued. But rest assured, suitable habitats have been prepared. The process will begin in phases, starting with coastal Pacific regions. United Nations Secretary-General Diallo rose to speak. Ambassador Taurix, my government requires more time to prepare our people for such a significant. The lights suddenly flickered and died. Emergency systems activated a moment later, bathing the chamber in dim blue illumination. A minor technical issue, Taurix announced, mandibles clicking in irritation. Our engineers will. His words died as every display in the chamber simultaneously activated, showing the same impossible image. A sleek, black vessel hovering directly above the Xorlian flagship. Its design was unlike anything in Confederate records. No visible propulsion systems, no external weapons, just smooth curves of some unknown material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. This is Captain Sophia Rice of the Earth Strategic Vessel Phantom, announced a confident human voice across all frequencies. We've been listening, watching, and learning. Taurix's translucent skin pulsed rapidly with patterns of alarm. What deception is this? He demanded, turning to the human delegates, who appeared as shocked as the aliens. On screen, Captain Rice continued. For 18 months, we've permitted your condescension and exploitation. That ends today. The Phantom emitted a pulse of energy that enveloped the Xorlian flagship, freezing it in place with a localized gravity field. Panicked communications from the flagship reported all systems locked. "Impossible," whispered a Kren scientist. "Their technology is primitive. They've barely reached their moon." "A deliberate misdirection," Rise explained, as if hearing the comment. "While you watched our public space program struggle with chemical rockets, the Phoenix Initiative developed technologies your scientists haven't even theorized." The screen shifted to show recorded conversations between Xorlian officials discussing Earth's dispensable indigenous population and detailed extraction plans that would render the planet uninhabitable for humans within a decade. "As you can see," Rise continued, her voice hardening, "we're well aware of your true intentions." Across Earth's orbit, 6 more vessels identical to the Phantom decloaked simultaneously, each positioning itself above a major Xorlian installation. News feeds from Earth showed the public's astonishment as the ships appeared, seemingly from nowhere. In Geneva, at the United Nations headquarters, Admiral Chen walked calmly to the podium where world leaders had gathered for an emergency session. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice broadcast alongside Reyes's, "today marks the end of humanity's tirade. For decades, we've maintained the appearance of technological inferiority while developing capabilities beyond Confederate understanding." On the embassy station, Taurix's composure finally shattered. "This is a violation of protection protocols. Your species is not authorized to possess such technology." Captain Reyes's reply was measured but firm. "We never asked for your protection, Ambassador, and we certainly never agreed to your exploitation. Now shall we discuss new terms for our relationship, as equals?" Throughout Confederate space, the message spread like wildfire. The primitive humans had deceived them all. The Xorlian Confederacy High Council chamber had never witnessed such chaos. Representatives from 17 member species shouted over one another, demands for explanations drowning out calls for military response. High Ambassador Taurix stood before them, his once proud posture diminished, skin patterns fluctuating between distress and shame. "How could your intelligence assessments be so catastrophically wrong?" demanded the Xanthari elder, her crystalline form shimmering with barely contained anger. The Xanthari, one of the oldest spacefaring races, had long chafed under Xorlian dominance within the Confederacy. All evidence indicated a standard technological progression. Taurix defended weakly. Their public space program utilized chemical propulsion. Their communications relied on radio waves. There was no indication. "No indication because you were too arrogant to look beyond the expected," interrupted the Kren representative. "My scientists have analyzed the data from their ships. This quantum displacement technology operates on principles we've never even theorized." On Earth, a similar meeting unfolded in the underground Phoenix Initiative headquarters. Admiral Chen and Captain Rise faced the Oversight Committee, and for the first time, a broader assembly of world leaders who had only just learned of the program's existence. "The Confederate Council is fragmented," Rise reported. 7 member species have already reached out through back channels, seeking separate negotiations with Earth. "And the Xorlians themselves?" asked the Secretary General. Stunned, Shen replied with the slightest hint of satisfaction. "Their entire strategic position was built on technological superiority. We shattered that assumption." The Brazilian president leaned forward. "What happens next?" Chen nodded to Dr. Rivera, recently returned from the embassy station. The xenobiologist activated a holographic display showing a complex network of wormhole routes. "During our reconnaissance missions, we mapped several previously unknown navigational pathways," Rivera explained. "Routes that could revolutionize interstellar trade throughout this sector. We control this information and the technology to utilize it." "A significant bargaining chip," observed the Chinese premier. "More than that," Rivera continued. 3 days ago, we received a communication from the Xanthari. They're offering to mediate new treaty negotiations between Earth and the Confederacy." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Xanthari were renowned for their neutrality and ancient wisdom. Their representatives specifically mentioned admiration for our strategic patience. Chen added, "It seems our decision to hide our capabilities has earned their respect." Halfway across the galaxy, aboard a Xorlian diplomatic vessel returning to their homeworld, High Ambassador Talrix faced the most difficult communication of his career. His superior, Grand Overseer Vex, did not attempt to hide his fury. "Your diplomatic career is finished," Vex hissed through the quantum transmission. "The humans have made us appear foolish before the entire Confederacy. We could still mount a military response," Talrix suggested desperately. "Their technology is advanced, but our fleet outnumbers. You still don't understand," Vex cut him off. "The Xanthari have agreed to mediate negotiations. The Kren are already discussing independent trade agreements with Earth. 3 other member species have threatened to leave the Confederacy if we take aggressive action. The balance of power has shifted." On the Phantom, now stationed in Earth orbit as a visible reminder of human capabilities, Captain Rice received notification of the upcoming negotiations. Lieutenant Quan approached with a datapad. "The Xanthari diplomatic vessel will arrive tomorrow," he reported. "They're requesting you personally lead our delegation." Rice raised an eyebrow. "Me? Not Admiral Chen or a professional diplomat. They specifically asked for the captain who revealed the truth. Apparently, they value directness." Quan hesitated. "The Xorlians are sending a new representative. Talrix has been reassigned." Rice allowed herself a small smile. How quickly fortunes change when arrogance meets reality. 1 year after the revelation, Earth had transformed. The Phoenix Initiative technologies, carefully released to the public in measured stages, had revolutionized everything from energy production to transportation. Gleaming quantum displacement shuttles now ferried passengers between continents in minutes rather than hours, while orbital platforms converted sunlight into limitless clean energy. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly completed Unity station, watching the first civilian interstellar cruise ship prepare for its maiden voyage. The massive vessel, named Horizon, would carry 500 tourists to the spectacular ring system of Kepler 7 bits, a journey once unimaginable to ordinary humans. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Dr. Okafor joined her at the window, her once dark hair now streaked with silver. After decades of working in secret, the physicist had become a global celebrity, her theories revolutionizing science virtually overnight. "Hard to believe this all began with a ridiculed paper at a physics symposium," Chen replied. "How does it feel to have your vindication?" Okafor smiled wryly. "Less satisfying than you might imagine. Science isn't about vindication. It's about discovery." Below them, on Unity Station's main concourse, humans mingled freely with representatives from 24 alien species. The former Xorlian embassy now served as headquarters for the newly formed Galactic Cooperative, with Earth holding 3 seats on the ruling council. Captain Rice, now Ambassador Rice, emerged from the diplomatic chamber accompanied by a Xanthari elder. The negotiations for stable artificial wormhole sharing had gone exceedingly well. "The Xorlians have officially signed the Technology Exchange Treaty," Rice informed Chen and Okafor. "Their new leadership is remarkably cooperative when not operating from a position of presumed superiority." The Xanthari elder's crystalline form sparkled as she spoke. "Your species continues to surprise us. Most civilizations would have sought revenge after such deception. Instead, you've chosen collaboration. Holding grudges across interstellar distances seems inefficient." Chen replied diplomatically, though all present recognized the subtle warning beneath her words. Humanity had not forgotten. They had simply chosen a more productive path forward. On the far side of Unity Station, in what was once the exclusive Xorlian diplomatic lounge, a joint human-alien research team discussed theories that even the oldest spacefaring races had never considered. Dr. Rivera, now head of sinological studies, guided the conversation between scientists whose civilizations had been strangers just months before. The quantum displacement principles might be applied to communications, suggested a Kren physicist, mandibles clicking with excitement. Instantaneous data transfer across any distance. We've already begun experiments along those lines, Rivera confirmed, no longer needing to hide humanity's achievements. In the station's docking bay, the Phantom underwent preparations for a historic mission beyond Confederate space. Captain Khalid, its new commander, reviewed the diplomatic protocols with Lieutenant Kwan, now his executive officer. "We're carrying olive branches this time," Khalid noted, "not just collecting intelligence. More interesting that way," Kwan replied with a smile. As Earth transitioned from cosmic backwater to galactic crossroads, humanity's reputation evolved as well. The species once mocked for their primitive technology became known for their unique approach to problem-solving and remarkable adaptability. From her office overlooking the Pacific, Admiral Chen watched the sunlight glinting off Unity Station in orbit above. Her secure terminal chimed with reports from Phoenix Initiative ships, now openly exploring distant sectors. The galaxy had become a much larger and more complex place, but humanity had earned their place in it. The Exorlians had learned a lesson that would echo across civilizations for generations to come. Underestimate humans at your peril, for behind their seemingly simple exterior might lurk capabilities beyond imagination, and the patience to wait for the perfect moment to reveal them.